regret. It's a word that we all kind of hate to hear. I regret the fact that I never asked this girl out. I regret the fact that I ever started dating this person. I regret that I didn't go into my career field sooner. It's a very, very, very common word that we use today. And rightfully so. But I think that there's a phrase that's worse. And it's, I don't know. I don't know what would have happened if I asked that person out. I don't know what would have happened if I ever went to that field. I don't know. I think that's a lot worse. And there's a couple of reasons for that, and I'm going to go into them. The first thing I personally think is that regretting is worse than never finding out. Because if you learn from something bad, it's not really a bad experience. It's just an experience, and you learn from it. Even if you're trying to go into a new field and you try and it doesn't work out, well, you know that that's not what's going to happen. And you don't think about, oh, well, what if? Let's say you like a girl and you ask her out and she says no. Well, it's better to ask and know she was going to say no than to never ask and never find out what she might have said. It's always better to pursue what you want and risk failure than to never find out. Because eventually when you get old, you're going to think to yourself, oh man, what if? What if? It's better to die with stories than with regrets. I can't say that I have many regrets in my life. I try to live with the philosophy that I've just mentioned. I've kind of had that since I was a kid. And looking back on it, even now, a lot of the things that I think I regret aren't really that important anyway. And anything that I might have regretted, I don't. So, for me personally, recently, someone that I loved very dearly passed away. And when they passed away, it hurt. Like a lot. And it made me think about all the time that I spent with them. And it was all positive. But even regardless of that, I wanted to make sure that we ended on a good note. And I remember the last time I saw them, I was sitting next to them, holding their hand. It was about, I'd say, a week or two before they passed. And I remember they were kind of in and out of consciousness. They didn't really know what was happening, but they were still there. And I remember holding their hand, and, the nurses came in, and I said my goodbyes, and the last thing I ever said was, I love you. And I am so glad that I did. It was very obvious throughout my life that I loved this person. It's very obvious that we had a good relationship. They were the best. Couldn't have really asked for anyone better. And even if I had just said goodbye, I feel like I would have regretted it. Because in their last moments with me, I wanted to really let them know what they meant. And just saying goodbye, I feel like would undervalue the relationship that I had with them. Saying I love you and really truly meaning it meant the world. Because I really did love them. And losing them was the worst thing that's happened in my life so far. Compared to that, a lot of the other stuff that I look back on now after that experience and I regret isn't that bad. Like I said, I regret not telling a girl that I liked her. Pales into comparison to saying goodbye to somebody who I loved my whole life and potentially not saying I love you and regretting that. And that's kind of the philosophy that I go through my life with now. Because we don't know really how much time any of us have left. So I always try to end on a positive note with people. I try not to say things that I don't mean or hurtful things. At the end of the day, I'm a human being. I make mistakes, but I always try to at least amend the mistakes that I made. so that way, if something like what happened again, God forbid, I don't regret anything. And regrets come in all forms. You regret, like I said, a relationship. You regret maybe you cheated on somebody. Maybe you regret an addiction. Maybe you regret whatever. I think the way that you can kind of amend something that you regret is to try and tell other people not to make the same mistake you did. And to try and make other people understand the pain that you went through because of your regret, and to end the cycle. Like I said, for any of those examples. Alright, let's just use the example of someone passing. Somebody passes away, and the last thing you ever said to them was, I hate you. And they meant a lot to you, and you just said it in a fit of anger, but that was the last thing they ever said to you. And one day you grow up and you have kids, and you have a similar situation with them, and they tell you they hate you, or they say they hate you to their sibling or whoever, and you impart that wisdom on them and say, hey, listen, I said this and then this happened. I think that's how you get over regret. And at least in my life, the few instances of things, like I said, that I do regret, even if they were small things, if I could pass on the knowledge to somebody else and make sure that they didn't make the same mistake, especially if it was somebody that I loved and cared about, I feel like I made amends to some extent. Obviously, the scar is still there and it'll never go anywhere, but I feel like it's the closest thing you can do to making a wrong right. And what do you have to lose? I feel like it's a lot easier to do this when you're young. I think Steve Jobs has a really good quote about trying things when you're young because you have nothing to lose. You still live with your parents, they still feed you and house you, and they still take care of you. But the older you get and the more responsibilities you have, it becomes harder to try things because you might want to start a business and you might sink all your money into the business, and as the business fails, then you got hungry mouths to feed and nowhere to live. And as a young person who definitely tries not to live with regret, there are certain things that you're kind of worried about that I feel like don't really need to be worried about. Number one is embarrassment. It's the big one. You go up to a girl that you like, tell her you like her, she laughs in your face. Yeah, it sucks for like a couple days maybe, and then you kind of get over it. And then you find another girl to get rejected by. No, I'm kidding. Sort of. But you try a business and it fails. Again, you're young. It's easy to fail and not be super worried. Obviously, it's not nice to lose money and to sink stuff in, but again, it's better to try and it fail than to never try and never know what's going to happen. Sure, it might fail, but it also might be the next great thing. And one day you're going to be laying on your deathbed with a lot of things going through your mind, and you're going to think to yourself, I'm really glad I did that. As opposed to, I should have tried that. Graveyard is the richest place in the world because of all the ideas that people had that they never tried because they were too scared to do something. Sounds good in theory, and it's a lot harder to put this into practice. Believe me, I still sometimes think, well, just do it. What's the worst that could happen? And I go through a million scenarios of what could happen. But I just keep reminding myself, right? Like, what if? Yeah, it could go terribly wrong. It could go terribly right, too. It is pouring rain outside, and the wind is whipping. Oh my god, that's crazy. Sorry, I'm getting off track now. I don't really speak too much on businesses because I haven't tried to start one, but I know a lot of people who do start them kind of say the same thing. It's like, well, at least I tried and it failed, or, it succeeds. But even in like relationships or failed relationships, right? People say like, oh, I regret that I ever met them. It's like, do you? Because even if the relationship failed and it was awful and super toxic and disgusting, if you learn something from it that you can then apply to the next relationship or the next talking stage, is it really a failure? Like, let's say you realize that you want someone who texts you all the time. You want someone who's constantly, I guess, reaffirming it. Like, like, hey, sorry I haven't been talking to you. Don't think I don't want to talk to you, whatever. And they truly mean it. I'm not saying in like the sense of somebody who's toxic and just trying to like lead you along and make sure you don't go anywhere. I'm talking about somebody who genuinely is busy, but they like you. If that's not working for you, then, the next time you go into a relationship, you could say, like, if they kind of do the same thing, that that's not something you want, you can get out. And you can say, well, I'm glad I learned that from that terrible relationship, so now I won't put up with it again. Or if they make a lot of, like, underhanded comments that they say are jokes, but they're not. I mean, you could go on and on with the list of things that people say, they don't like in relationships. People that, one of the biggest things that I know a lot of my friends have talked about, party girls. They say, I'm worried about her because I don't know where she is or what she's doing with X, Y, and Z. And it's a fair argument. But even if the relationship ends poorly, you can say, well, now I know that I don't want to be with a party girl. And you can look for a girl, instead of finding a girl at the bar, you can find a girl at the gym, or maybe the library, or the movie theater. I don't know, pick a spot. Overall, what I'm saying is, nothing in life is truly a failure if you learn something from it. The only failure in life is failing to try. That was a good one. I'm proud of that one. Yeah. It's not fun to fail. It sucks, and you'd rather succeed. But a lot of the time, you need to fail. Think about all the greatest athletes ever. They all failed. All of them. Everyone fails, but not everyone tries. Basically. I think I just should end the video on that. It might be a little bit shorter, but I think to some extent I feel like I'm making this video for myself a little bit, because there's a lot of things that I've been telling myself I'm going to do that I haven't done, and including starting to make these videos and like editing them and posting them. And I think I'm kind of finally starting to come around to it. And I also haven't really been active trying to date or anything. And I think I'm trying to convince myself to try and throw my hat back in the ring there, despite what all of social media is telling me. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna end it there. Thanks for watching. Again, no regrets, just failures. Again, it's better to know than to live with regrets. Thanks for watching.